I get to have the pleasure of introducing our speaker. She's Linda Lattimore. If you read about her, very impressive background. She's a seasoned lawyer, a corporate executive, and a business strategist. Woman does not sit down. This is the only time we'll see her sitting down, wherever she is. She is also president of the Cross Sector Institute. It's for socially conscious attorneys who give back to the community. If that's not enough, she's also a noted speaker, published author, and founder and executive director of the WGN Global Fund. It's a nonprofit that educates young women in underserved communities and how to start their own businesses. And today, Linda will share with you how you are value-able. You're valuable and value-able, and how to best select a company that is a good value match for you. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce Linda Lattimore. Round of applause.
Good morning. Well, I am here today to talk about something a little bit different because I have also been where you guys are. It's tough out there when you're trying to find work or just a new opportunity, maybe even if you're not looking for work in particular, but you want to do something new and different. And you feel kind of lonely sometimes, which is why I like to push everybody into the center and come on down because we're all in this together. So I really wanted to talk to everybody about a different approach for looking for work, rather than just going and looking at what the job description is. I mean, I think we tend to do that, don't we? We just run around on LinkedIn and wherever else, and we just kind of think about what we've done in the past and kind of assess what our skills are. Maybe someone helps us write a resume or something like that, or we write them ourselves, but we don't actually really stop and think about what our value proposition is in terms of our experiences in the past and what we can bring forward, and in particular, how we line up with the companies that might have the same values as us. So this is more of a conversation about another way of maybe looking at trying to find work today and being able to tell everybody what your values are. So let's see if we go forward, right? Great. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about what's going on in the market out there, and then maybe a little bit about what the employers are responding to in this market and why it's changing up a little bit and how they're running their companies, how some of the candidates are showing up now, and then I want to talk about Company U. Okay, so each of us has a brand. It's what people think of when we leave the room. That's your brand. Okay, and how you show up when you go out there and you start looking for work. And talking to employers. So, does this resonate with anybody? Right? Do you ever feel like you're the only one going one direction and everyone else is going somewhere else? I haven't gotten over going to YMCA, some kind of Zumba thing with both my girls, and everyone was going this way and I was the only one going that way. And I got more grief about that from my teenagers who are now grown and married. So I'm almost scared to go back to Zumba so that I don't look like that fish, But I'm sure we all feel like that. Who's ever felt like this? Raise your hands. Right? Yeah. And if it's not work, it's at home or just in the community somewhere. So, and I'm also sure that we all have war stories. Who has war stories about their exit from their last business? Right? Who doesn't have war stories? Really? That's great. Really, that's wonderful. We all have something. I feel like, many times we leave companies and we leave because we felt like it's not always about a riff, right? It's not always because it was budget cuts. I know I moved from Houston here recently in January, and a lot is going on in Houston in terms of oil and gas, and a lot of people are getting laid off. And in that instance, many instances, and it's a trickle down with all the other industries, right? It has to do with budget cuts. But also, many times we leave because that company just doesn't have the same values as we do, right? I had a really good friend who came back from his honeymoon, and he ran a small office, and it was a sales office, so he had a number of sales staff in that office. And when he came back from his honeymoon, he noticed that all of the newspapers were piled up on the outside of the door, and when he went in, there wasn't one stick of furniture in the place. That was their way of telling him they didn't need him anymore, was to come back to something like that. That is not an uncommon story. I bet every single one of you, if you have not experienced something, maybe not that dramatic, you certainly have felt like it was unfair. right? And I think it's because we weren't lined up from the beginning with the company that we chose to go with. So, you aren't alone out there. I would say more than half of the workforce today is looking for work. Even if they're not unemployed, they are unhappy and they are looking for work. And what's happening is, particularly with this new generation coming in, there is a tendency, no, it's not a tendency, it's exactly what's happening. They're looking for value exchange. They're saying, I'm worth XYZ, and I want to have a better life than you had or my parents had. I want more time. I want to have a life that is manageable. And they're asking the companies to step forward and also do the same thing. So this value exchange is about to hit us really hard in all of our businesses. And I want each of you to really understand this, because it will be a way that you can tailor your job search, understanding that employers are beginning to understand that they're going to have to step up. I know sometimes it really doesn't feel like that, but that's actually what's happening. So when we look at the demographics of it all, a lot of it has to do with this new generation of workers coming in, right? So in 2014, as you can see up there, the boomers were like 23.7% of the workforce. Millennials were already more than that at 28%. And by 2020, a third of all of our workforce is going to be that next generation. Now that has a significant impact on the way that employers are beginning to, tailor the way they offer benefits, tailor the way their offices are structured in terms of space, how they're going to go out and recruit. It's not the same old way we've always done it before, which means that the way that you're going to be looking for this is also different for these jobs. So how many people in here, you don't have to tell me the exact year, but how many people in here are boomers? Quite a few, right? How many people in here are Gen Xers? We've got okay, also quite a few. Millennials? A handful, and that's the way it's looking, and that's what's starting to show up, okay, in the way things are moving forward. So I'm not even going to go into some of the work styles right now because that's not important. But what I'll say is that the market is responding to what the next generation of millennials are asking for. So everyone's demanding transparency, right? Because we've had all these companies that are falling apart or not acting really great. And companies are responding with corporate governance. Everyone is saying, we want to work for a company that makes a difference. It either sells products that are worthwhile. And so we're starting to see social enterprises show up. We want to work as part of a team. There's all these sector partnerships that are showing up. We want to have a work-life balance. Flex time is becoming more important. And, they're looking for CEO, salary equalization, right? You're starting to see where people aren't real thrilled when nobody else is making money, but the CEOs are making gazillions. So it's becoming a healthier work environment. And there's a lot of laggards, don't get me wrong, in the companies, but they're all beginning to step up. Because ultimately, we all want the same thing, right? It doesn't matter what generation you are, we want to feel like we make a difference at work. We want to feel like our word is worth something, right? And we want to feel like we're working for a company who has values, that's not just in it only for the bottom line, but is in it because they want to make sure that their employees are happy, that their customers are happy, all their stakeholders, right? So that's what's going on in the marketplace. Bigger companies are beginning to have money to spend on things like their employer brand, right? So what you see is, even after all the BP mess, remember with the spill and everything, when it was at first a big debacle with that first CEO, then all of a sudden they started running ads, and they were all local ads. They wanted you to believe that they were interested in the community, so they had changed a lot of that. You're beginning to see that come down in a whole bunch of companies where they realize that to find you, they're going to have to attract you in because you have an interest in working with them. So they're beginning to look at that. And there's new avenues of recruiting. They're not recruiting in the same place anymore. Yes, although LinkedIn has historically been the number one place where you would go find the biggest job board probably online, this newer generation is not necessarily going straight to LinkedIn. They're going to Facebook ads, right? They're going to some of the other social media ads to look for work. They're talking to their friends through Facebook about openings that are coming up. So anyone who's out looking for work right now perhaps should not go to the same old locations that you've always looked for historically, just because that's the way we did it in the past, because it's changing, right? So some of the things that's happening with these companies, now I'll grant you, it seems like it's happening with the larger companies, it seems like it's happening with the tech companies, but it's also beginning to show up in some of the non-tech, smaller companies. They're trying to create a more fun and social working environment. They're trying to create this culture of entrepreneurship. So they realize that a lot of us really actually love to be entrepreneurs. We just don't have the money to do it. But we are creative, and we all have a great idea for a business or a great idea for something. But, we got to pay the bills. So what they're trying to do is keep people staying around a little longer by creating opportunities within the corporation, sort of entrepreneurship, where it's funded, but you also get to be quite creative and step up and lead projects and bring ideas to them, and they'll let you run with them. It's sounding a little foreign to some people. Probably they're like, I didn't have that experience, but it's happening. Educational opportunities. It used to be that we would all see that you might get some college paid for or something, if you got a certain grade. I think I've seen that in a number of companies that I've worked for. What they're noticing now is that in particular, the newer generations coming in are adept with a lot of online. So you're seeing a lot of online universities at the companies, and you're seeing other ways that they can create mentorship opportunities, and they're stepping in for that as well. And there's an emphasis on work-life balance, which, having practiced law for 38 years and been in-house for a lot of that didn't used to be the way it was for me. You're even seeing it with like the 49ers. I love the fact that they really were not having any luck at all with this younger generation coming in with the old playbooks, although it looks like that's what they're doing right there with the big old pad. And they've had to convert all of their playbooks over onto iPads and stuff, and so they're not meeting in the locker room anymore, and they said that their success rate for recruiting went way up once they realized that the old way of doing things was not the same, that they too, even in football, had to switch their recruiting methods and retention methods to new ways. So my big question here is, if this is the market, and this is kind of what's bubbling up in the market out there, how are you guys adjusting to this? What are each of you doing, given that the marketplace is shifting? Because this is all good news for you, for all of us, right? So what are you doing, right, to shift with it? And that's kind of what I'm hoping that you'll start thinking about today. I love this. I saw this. It's actually a CEO of a company that helps people, and she's basically said, when we go shopping for a house, we don't immediately say, I want 3 bedrooms. We figure out the schools, we figure out the neighborhood, we figure out the climate, the city we want to live. We go in behind and we do all this extrinsic look behind. And then when we find the neighborhood, and then when we find the proper school district, and whatever else it is that's important to us, then we look and say, does it have 3 bedrooms? Does it have 4? Because some of the other things are more important than does it have 3 bedrooms. And historically, that's the way we've gone and we've looked for work. We've just looked at a job description, and then after that, we've just wondered what it paid. So I'm curious, who's still looking at it like that? Because I think probably the majority of it. Any feedback here? Yeah.
That's how I'm looking for work right now.
Right? You're on the job description and then on the pay, right? Yeah, and I think, what happens is our success factor tends to not be as great after we're there, right? Because many times once we get in someplace, when we only took it for salary or for the job based on this description on our resume, which has sales words, just sales words, right? How much money did you make? How much money did you bring into the company? What are the budget cuts? All the other things that we bring in that we put in our resumes, but we haven't really studied the company. Many times we don't end up staying for any length of time. Or if we do, we're pretty unhappy with the outcome because we haven't gone beyond the surface of it. We haven't looked at the rest of it. Anyone else? I'm curious. Talk to me. Yeah.
That's really what Glassdoor is really adding to it. Is
Yes.
Scope out.
Yes. And do you use it? How many people use Glassdoor? That's excellent. And what do you get out of it? Will you say that they're not there? Let's say they come in with a really great job offer for you, but Glassdoor has already sort of given you a warning. Would you tend to take the job anyway because you were hungry, or would you evaluate it? Good. Anyone else?
I would have never accepted my last job. I would have ran the opposite direction.
If you had known what?
If I had no more information of how the executives recruited the company, it became a playground.
Yes.
So what offers and the things they promised, they don't know what to see. And it became obvious within after 3 weeks that this is not.
And that's exactly my point. When we can't find the information out on the front end, we are very disappointed sometimes on the back end. I happen to be very, very interested and do a lot of teaching on corporate social responsibility. That's just my thing, which I'll explain later. And I went to work for a huge company in Houston to help them with a restructure. And they had been voted number one in the industry, in the oil and gas industry, for CSR and that kind of stuff. Well, I'll just say it wasn't like that at all. Immediately, I made one of my goals to get on the CSR committee because I thought, oh, good, I'll have all these other business goals, but this will fill my emotional tank. And the response was, you don't have time for that, sorry. So, but that was what they were advertising. So, there's a lot of research that we need to do to make sure our values are in line with their values, right? So that gets down to this question, are we focused only on income to the extent of everything else and the jobs, or are we beginning to look at the companies as a values-based business, not value, not just bottom line profit, but what they give back? So my belief is that sometimes we forget that each of us is a company. I mean, we're not a corporation, but we're a company, right? So company you. Now, what do companies do? How many people have worked for companies that have mission statements? Pretty much everybody, right? And we don't even remember what they were, do we? They were just mumbo jumbo. And vision statements, right? And sometimes they're all mixed up together. And we haven't seen a lot, but finally, thank God, we're seeing some value statements. That's beginning to show up, the 3 pillars. But have we done it ourselves? Have we made ourselves the company where we have a vision for what we want, and then we have a mission? So our vision is going to be, you hear visionaries and missionaries, right? The visionary is the big picture. What do we want to do with our life in terms of making an impact in some way, let's say? Are we just going from job to job just to put money on the table, or do we actually have a vision of what we would like to have in our life in terms of the way we want to live, in terms of the way we want to make money, in terms the way we want to make impact? And then the mission statement is going to be, what are the steps are we going to take to get to the vision? Like, how are we going to get there, right? So it may be that in some instances we may need some more education to get to a certain place. That would be part of your mission, would be to go take those steps to get there. And then ultimately our value statement is, what boundaries do we live in that we don't want to go out of in terms of the way we conduct our life, our business, for our families, for ourselves? And that would be our value statement. So really, we're not any different than all of these companies that we're going to work for, which I always remind my clients, a corporation is nothing but a group of people. We always talk about it like it's a person. It's not. It's made up of all of us, right? So we each need to have a vision for what we want, a mission of how we're going to get there, how we're going to execute this, and then we need to figure out what's important to us. So values, I just shout out some values that are important to you, please. I'm curious. I was going to have everyone stand up, but there's too many of us. Like, Nikki, what's important to you? Integrity is important to Nikki. Gregoria, what's important to you? In terms of a value for yourself. Helping other people. Exactly, that's critical. I can't see your name behind your name tag, but Joseph, what's important to you? Absolutely. being creative and entrepreneurial, or interest just in the corporation, but you're a creative person. You want to make an impact, right? You want to. I would imagine as an entrepreneur, you would want to govern your own life. And what do you think of when you think of that?
The idea of not working for a paycheck, you're working for an investment.
Exactly. He likes the idea of not working for a paycheck, working for an investment into something that makes a difference. Probably, right? How about you?
Honesty, clarity, goes with integrity.
Honesty and clarity, and they go with integrity.
I like working for someone that has something that brings a lot of value to a lot of people. That I can sell, I can have passion about it, and say, hey, I believe in your product. I use it. I want my friends to use it. Without a hitch, I recommend it.
And that's actually, you just said one of my entire slides that's coming up. That's what people want. You want to be proud of the company that you're working for. You don't want to feel like they don't care, right? I missed you, but not really. Bravery, I love that. Bravery is a great value because we're looking at values right now, not so much skills, values. Wait, let me grab him.
Probably people that value their customers rather than just seeing them as a profit center.
You guys should start a business together, okay? Someone that values their customers rather than just seeing them as a profit center. Go ahead. Collaboration. You like working with a collaborative company, teamwork. I do too, where everyone's listening to the collective wisdom of all, not just one person, right?
Suppression of turnover and fostering stability among the team.
So how would you put that in one value word? I'm breathing into this thing.
Faithfulness.
Faithfulness to the employees?
Yeah.
I love that.
I don't know if it's such a value, but I think everybody wants to be heard when they make suggestions, when they're have a critique, not a criticism, but a critique, something that could move the team or the company forward. You yourself want to be valued.
Yes. That's right. Wanting to be valued, wanting to be heard. So how would we turn that into a value word? A value that's important to us. Respect. Actually, that's great. Respect is perfect. You value respect. More. Ladies?
I'll throw out effectiveness.
You value effectiveness. Okay. And what does that mean to you exactly? Results?
I value a company that are using their resources effectively, creating results, as opposed to just a lot of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. I'm trying to think. Go ahead. I was trying to think if there's also other words to put that into. Effectiveness I like. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think effectiveness is the word that came to mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just being efficient, but it's also being effective.
You value efficiency, effectiveness. Honesty. Yeah, we all value honesty. I got to tell you, I keep thinking of the newspapers outside that door. Go ahead.
Praise, recognition.
You value recognition. Yes, we all value recognition. What else? Anyone else?
Work-life balance.
Work-life balance, right. So the thing about these values is we all value them, so of course we need to make sure that we are living that brand. That as much as we want that, how do we show those things each day ourselves in that value exchange, right? And so, I threw that up there because we're thinking, what are all these values? Our values versus theirs, and this is pretty much what you said. Both of you guys said this. It was actually. Were you looking at my slide when you said that? Just teasing. So, do they create products or services that we're proud of? Are we going to tell our friends on Facebook, I work for the coolest company, they have the coolest product? I mean, or are we just going to be the armchair quarterbacks who are grousing? Are we going to go out there and really be excited about it or not? Because it translates down, right? Would you suggest that someone else apply to a certain company? Or would you say, stay away? Right? That's huge right there. The biggest one for me is, are you growing every day at work and do you feel fulfilled. And honestly, we're all on digital overload right now with all of the stuff going on the outside. So we have to be able to go into our space of work and feel fulfilled, right? And that's not always easy. So a lot of words up there, but these are just new ways, like maybe when you're looking to figure out about a company's values, here's some places maybe you would think about going, right? Not just the company's career page, right? You might go to their Facebook page, because nowadays they're all trying to do this idea, not all, I'm being too generic here, of an employer brand. And they're trying to come out and show you pictures of what their employees are doing. And they're trying to come out and show you why they have great benefits and this, that, or the other. So you would look there, you'd look on Glassdoor. You could do a Google search and say, does this company suck? And honestly, I've done that. And I can't tell you how many reviews come up when you input that in. So you could look at job board postings, which is what we've historically done with the LinkedIn and the other places. You can talk to former employees through places like LinkedIn and other places, or read reviews that you see on Glassdoor or some of the other ones. So there's a lot of places you can go. But I'm curious, who's doing any of these things, and what else are you doing when you're looking for work right now? Especially when you're looking to figure out if that company matches up with you.
I always look for someone that's working there.
Yeah. So you go talk to people that are working there. Do you know those people?
If I do, I ask them.
Right.
But not usually.
Do you feel like they're forthcoming with a stranger if they're disgruntled?
Depends how I approach it.
What do you say?
If it's just like, I want to know about this company, I'm thinking about it, just broad statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really hard to ask the tough questions, and we'll get into that in a few minutes, right? I mean, the tough questions like, does this company have integrity? Or, I mean, really, it's tough to ask those questions.
Yeah, I find that it helped me if I come out specifically and say, you know, I'm looking for this particular value in a company or this particular environment. Will I be a good fit? Is this a type of company that does this?
And do you do that?
Yeah, and that tends to work because it takes out the personal elements. Like I'm not asking a person, is this company, I'm not asking them to reveal anything bad. I'm just asking them to reveal the environment. And from that, I tend to pick up on whether something would be good or bad for me. Mm-hmm. Because it might not be bad for them. For instance, there's a popular company here that they love to have beer nights. They go out for beer every night, and that's great for some people. That's not something that I want to be in. That's not the environment that I want to work in. And so I just asked a straight question: what is the culture like? What do they like to do to wind down? Mm-hmm. And they just tell me, and is that, you know, and I'll know whether or not that's a good fit for me. There's no emotional component to that. It's just good or bad.
There's some interesting statistics on that too, right? So they're beginning to see that for a while they were trying to do all the beer nights and the ping pong tables, very much like Google all the cool stuff, and they're finding that what people really want is flex time to be with their families. They want, you know, those kinds of benefits more than the cookies or the beer or the whatever else, right? So they're starting to, I won't say they're shifting away, maybe they're incorporating some of that too, but because they're also finding that a lot of, and I hate to be generic between the generations, okay, so just take this with a grain of salt, but it's statistics, right? But, you know, when they talk about the millennials, a lot of them are marrying later, and their office becomes their family in many instances, okay? So they're more inclined to be in a collective space where they are enjoying having the camaraderie, whereas some of us old folks and the boomers are used to having our space, and maybe we have family, in my case grandkids, we're going to go home, and we don't care to stay as late. So there's a little bit of, that's when you're researching the company, who is the base of employees there as well. So that's an excellent, something else you want to look for, does this company have a culture of innovation? If you're a creative type like Joseph here, you want to know that the company has a culture of innovation, right? If you're a tech type, you probably want to make sure that they're really well advanced in technology and also have a culture of innovation. that might not be as important. If you're in an accounting world, it might be that you really want to work for a company that has a culture of compliance and more structure because you are a more structured person. You're more comfortable in that space. I was out in California visiting at a conference actually a couple of years ago, and it was Nancy Duarte's, and she's written a book called Resonate, another, I can't remember what the other one is, but it's all about presentations and stuff like that. Everyone was running around in there on scooters. I found it nerve-wracking, but she was saying that's how we keep everybody this creative space. They're zipping in scooters, they're throwing balls across the room. You know, for me, who's used to, you know, the legal brain, it was distracting. But for all those people, they were having a blast. So you're going to look at that, and you're going to check it out, like you say, on the front end. You know, so if they're coming out with this employer brand and they're coming out with what I used to call cause marketing, it used to be that companies would put a tag on clothes, oh, we give money to the rainforest. Well, everybody sees through that now. They want to know that you're really walking the talk. Where do you go? We've talked about Glassdoor. You can check out Amazon, obviously, and some other places. And that's when I said Google, when I put I hate, or you can put whatever you want, you'll get a bunch of stuff coming up. And you really want to keep moving forward to see. Is anyone familiar with this particular website? It's pretty cool because companies come in and they get badges. They list the values that are important to them, whether it's flex time, whether it's any of those, okay? And it's called the Good Jobs, and they have a culture quiz at the back that you can take. And you put your values in, things that are important to you, and it will do this match, a value match, with the companies that have come in and filled out that information, and pop up a list of companies that might have the same values as yours, okay, or some of the things that are important to you. Now, I would say you still have a lot of research to do behind that, because after all, the companies came in and they said what their values were. You're still going to want to go check it out, but you're going to have, at least it's the beginning of a start. They're trying to match people with things that are important to them. So I thought it was a pretty interesting website. You know, so here comes the tough part too, is these interview questions, right? How do you find out when you're going over and you finally made it in, you have an interview, and you're almost sometimes a little afraid to come off a certain way? You don't want to be too negative. I mean, you always want to have a stash of questions, right? So it doesn't look like you're not interested, but how far can you go with the questions, right? Without looking like you're overkill, you know, an overkill. You can ask them about other employee success stories. I mean, if you ask HR or the manager that you're talking to, tell me a great story about one of your employees, you're going to know pretty quick if they're just bumbling and don't have much to say about their employees. To me, that's a red sign, okay, a red flag. If they actually have something, well, we have this great employee program where we recognize employees who have, I don't know, whatever's important to you, done X, Y, Z. What would be important to you in terms of recognition at your companies? This gentleman right here in the plaid shirt. You?
Yes. Okay. Always like in the company I worked with, we always had a meeting every month where we had free taco breakfast for everybody, and we had a fun quiz, and people were recognized for their accomplishments and given gift cards, which was good for morale.
And how did they get those accomplished? Did people turn them in?
Through the manager.
Okay, so at his company, once a month they met for breakfast tacos, and they actually recognized people who had done really great things at their company. What other kind of recognition would you want?
Well, similar to that, we had a large office group, and every week during our staff meeting, there was a single award, and whoever won it, they would give it to the next person on the team. So, you know.
That's great.
Everyone except the last one did. That good moment, see.
So Alan is saying at his company, once a week they would all get together and somebody would win this particular recognition award, and their job was did they pick the next person, or so their job was the following week to actually pick the person that should be recognized, and they kept passing it forward week to week, which I love that idea. That's a great idea.
I once worked for a Canadian-based company that here in the U.S. that every time there was going to be a layoff, people knew. They were asked to stay focused on your project. They gave very, very decent packages to the people that were leaving. However, they always threw a party for these people. It was more of a goodbye, but not forever type. And the good thing was that sometimes within 5, 6 months, depending on the situation, you would see these people coming back. So you would see people hauling stuff out, and you would sit there fretting over your position or your security. And it was just a different concept. And it made people not be afraid and not constantly sit there. Well, when am I next? Should I be looking for something else? It was more like comfort. And so that brought it.
So they celebrated them even as they left, is what you're saying?
Yes, there was an invitation. Come over, we're going to say goodbye to our friends, type of party. Again, interesting concept, but their HR was totally different. Set up with a different mindset. And I enjoyed it. Most of us that were there, it was a large company. Eventually it was sold to a global company, but that was very comforting. Very different concept. So that's.
So is anyone kind of getting a new way, or they think they might take a different look at how they're going to approach looking for jobs? Or have you all been looking for values along the way first, or looking for jobs? Who's been looking for just the job and the position first? I know you mentioned that, right? And when you look at the job description itself, what are you looking for? Skills that you have, or to match up?
If it matches my skills, and if it's a match, then I go to the company to have like a mission statement and have values.
So you are checking to see if they have values. That's what you're saying?
But I try not to go immediately to Glassdoor and see all the negative reviews, because I know they come with a grain of salt, I guess.
Right.
This company I work for, they had pockets of people that were dysfunctional, teams that were dysfunctional, they had teams that were just high performers. So generally people go on Glassdoor, they're kind of angry. So.
Really? Well, war stories, right? So I am curious on succession planning in the companies that you've been in. Have they, on your succession planning, tied any of your job moves or salary increases to the values you've exhibited at the company? Some, right? So that's the new wave. That's where we're going, for it to be included actually as part of your annual metrics in your succession planning as well. So let's take a look. So relevant questions. We can ask the managers, tell us about somebody really cool. We can ask employees, and we've already heard people reaching out to other employees and saying, what are you proud of? Do we say that to them? Do we actually put it in terms of values? What are you proud of here when we ask these employees that? Or do we just say, how's it to work at the company? The gentleman in the cream shirt. Don't you all feel like you're in school? What they like most about working there. Do you ask the questions about the company itself, though, when you're talking to the employees? Yeah. See, those are the hard questions, I think, but I think they're important. So, Nike has a lot of really interesting programs. So they actually bring in all the orientation. This has been going on for years, and they talk about the history of the company. So everyone always has a sense of, this is where this company came from. These were the values from the beginning. I think Phil Knight, who started it, was selling, shoes out of the trunk of his car, and his co-founder was his coach. They wanted better equipment out there. And so even today, when you start work there, you go to this, it's not called Nike Camp, but you go and that's the first thing you learn is the history, the values, why it was important back then and why it's important today. So they have a constant push down of values at their company. And that would be really easy. Those are the kinds of things you can Google and look to research the companies. So we've talked about this. I'm going to skip through some of this. So personal stories support your values. Okay, now you're in there for the interview. Okay, and you have these certain values. We've already brought up some of them. How do you express those values in your interviews? Or are you busy talking about all the things you did as a programmer, as a lawyer, as an accountant, as a admin person, whatever it is your job is? Are we so busy talking about what we did for the last few companies that we omit to talk to the recruiting team, the HR team, about the things that are important to us in terms of having more time with our families, or asking them, how is it that you guys express values in your company? What do you do? Do we ask those questions? By and large, who just talks about the last few positions they've had in their resume? That's honest. Anyone else? Really? Okay.
I do ask about the company and what they're, it takes them aback in the interview sometimes when I ask them, tell me about one of your biggest accomplishments as a team, you as a manager, what you see as your biggest values. Because those are important to me. I've been in technology going back to about 1988. I've seen all the changes that just get to work, clock in, get it done, now to agile and working as a team. So, like I said, more and more when I'm sitting in an interview, I'm asking those kinds of questions. How do they operate?
How do you express your personal values? With personal stories. Because stories tell a lot, right? When you tell a story, it tells who you are. How do you express those?
Well, I talked a lot about my job reviews and some of the things that come up, my personal values. And I'm a really good communicator in the office. I'm a good mentor, and so I express in my values personally are that I want a team that does well at communication and that I can mentor fellows.
And do you attach those to personal stories?
Yes.
They're really powerful in the interview process.
And I've been asked that at times. Can you tell me a story when you mentored somebody? Can you tell me when you had a communication problem on the team? How did you facilitate?
Right, but what they do is they ask those questions, okay? So we're going to add a little twist to this. They do ask the standard question always, right? Can you tell us a time that you did X, Y, Z? You did, action words, not value words, okay? That's standard interview stuff, right? But is it possible for us to overlay in their stories, okay? So we happen to be talking. I remember a time when I saw a little boy fall down on a bicycle, scrape his knees, and I helped him up, and then I don't know, whatever the story is, okay? When we can overlay those stories in there about our values, they begin to see you not as facts on a resume, or that you have action items that you can be a mediator, but how? It's a personal story, and you don't have to put the names on it. But it's a story, and it's very effective when you're looking for work, right? Because now you're a person. You're not just another person that's shown up for that same job interview, but they say, that guy was talking about this time that XYZ happened. Personal stories are really, really powerful in the interview process as well. And you go home and you think about them. You attach your values and you begin to think about some stories that you could relate, because it shows authenticity rather than the sales words that we tend to put on our interviews, right? So, value exchange. We're looking to have values. For us, the company's looking to get value back. That's the new buzzwords for the recruiting process right now and for looking for work, is value exchange, and not just on skill set. That's just something I like. Work without love is slavery, Mother Teresa. So I know we've all felt that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about something, because you might find it interesting, you might not. I'm going to give out, if y'all want it at the end, I did a value statement worksheet, which might be really helpful to you guys. There's a whole list of values. You can circle ones to see ones that are important to you, because it's hard. We always come up with the same ones: honesty, transparency, but I've got about 300 values on here. Okay, and you could circle them and see. And then there's some questions you can ask yourself to see how you can really get clear in your head what they are, so that you can present them at the next job interview, right, or job opportunity, or work opportunity if it's not job you're looking for. And then I'm going to tell you about another workshop that might be of interest to you guys if you want to come in July. So that's me and my mom and dad sitting out on their trailer many years ago. And I just we have these tools that we bring forward that sometimes we forget to talk about in job interviews. And where we're going forward, I call it defining our natural aptitude, the other DNA. And so there I was, this cute little kid, like all little kids up in Fort Worth. And at age 5, we moved to Peru in Mexico. And so I went from holding the dolly to seeing, a bunch of very, very hungry children at the age of 5. And I think that's sort of the first tool in my toolkit. Each of you has a tool in your toolkit. You have lots of tools in your toolkit, but we forget about them, that they're based on experiences. We moved a lot, 5 high schools in 4 years. My dad was in international business. I ultimately ended up in Miami. And at 16, I wanted to go be a social worker. That's what I wanted to do. And my dad wasn't really thrilled with that. He wanted, doctor, lawyer, like all parents or whatever. So he sent me down to meet Mrs. Miller, who was a social worker. And of course, by the end of that conversation, I didn't want to be a social worker anymore. I think they had a pact or something that maybe I shouldn't be a social worker, So off I went to college and got a finance degree, and then off I went to law school, got a law degree. And, so I was putting tools in my toolkit along the way, like each of you have. And then I eventually got married. It was a really difficult marriage, and I'm not in that marriage anymore. I have 2 great daughters, but tools in the toolkit all along the way. And ultimately, I ended up, when my girls got out of college, they're married now and they're out the door, I ended up starting a women's organization quite by accident. I invited 5 girlfriends to play golf, and 50 showed up or something like that, and I don't even play golf. Well, but it was just going to be fun, I don't think any of us really played golf that well. So long story short, it ended up into a business organization for women in 10 cities in 6 countries, and we did microfinance projects all around the world, supporting women who really, really, really have nothing. We're all really fortunate sitting in here today. They have truly nothing. So I was able to use all those tools in my toolkit. I had a finance degree and a law degree, and I had seen poverty from the time I was age 5. I really understood what it was like to be a woman in the middle of the night, wondering how you were going to feed your kids and all that kind of stuff. I got it. And so I was able to move forward with that. I think sometimes we forget that we have all these tools in our toolkits that many are value-based, based on our experiences, the personal stories that we have. We tend to default to the words on our resumes that talk about the bottom line dollars that we save the company, or how we can mediate, or how we can train, but we don't express why you have that tool. I know I got all those tools from all of that craziness, right? And I mean, ultimately with Women's Global Network, I took women to Honduras and I took women to Africa, and we all went and began to exchange those values and use our tools. My wish for each of you today is that you can step back into what makes you valuable, right? And be able to express your values with depth, because you stand a much greater chance of succeeding and staying at your company for a pretty long time. So I am running just a 3-hour workshop in July. Anyone is welcome to come. I've included that here if it's interesting to anyone, to kind of go back in and figure out what those tools are and how you can express them, either in your bios or your resumes or in life in general, because it really is your personal brand. And you are welcome to join us. You can go online to my website.